why do black people in Latin American countries have to insert the word Afro and then the country in which they're from, but white people don't have to say Euro Honduran, Euro Mexican, Euro Colombian? I'm curious to see what you say.
What happened to us is that even where we're at, who adopted us to come into the country label us. Okay? We were not under Honduras for so many years. We got 240 years right now that we have become under the Honduran government. They always left us out. We didn't know what we were nor who we are. They were calling us Africans. We did not know we were called African. They labeled us African. Okay. So then for us, we're Afro-Honduran because this is the easiest way out. Because I'm telling you, it is a way out. It's not that for us in Latin America, we are still wondering who we are, what we are, where we're from. Because even here, I'm telling you from my experience, even here, once I say I'm from Honduras, everybody steps back and take a breath. One time I said the word to one of my employees, and I said this word. I said, "We Negroes, we need to step up and get the things done." And she went to the bathroom and cried and reported me. When the investigation came, they didn't know that I was black because she said I was Latina. In the other people's mind, I was your type of Latina. I was not black. And they were looking for me with this name and a Latina. When I said I am this name, hey, what is this complaint about? I said, that's my question. So you tell me, who am I? When I get here, who am I? When I'm over there, who am I? I do not know. I know who I am. Me personally now, I know who I am. I love myself. I love where I'm coming from. I teach my kids to love themselves, to be who they are. But I'm still labeled.
You can't escape being labeled.
I worked in a store here, and they would be in line, and I would be, like having a conversation with the client that's in front of you at the moment. And you can hear the Latinos behind saying, ¿y esta negra qué? ¿Y esta negra qué le pasó? ¿Y esta negra por qué no se apura? ¿Y esta negra esto? ¿Y esta negra lo otro? When they get to you, that they get to me, and I would say, buenas tardes, ¿cómo está? Where did you learn Spanish? Who teach you Spanish? I said, I'm Hispanic. And I would ask, where are you from? I'm from here. And I go like, here where? Well, my mother came from Mexico and my dad, I'm from here. I said, okay, well, I am from here too, but I consider myself Latin American. But what part of Latin American? I'm from Honduras. Yo soy de México y las latinas no hablan como ti ni se parecen a ti. Es que tú solo conoces una parte de Latinoamérica o solo has visto. Eso, us in between Latin America, we discriminate ourselves. We do not accept each other. And I'm telling you why. They labeled us. They labeled us. We did not label ourselves.
Before you shared that experience with me, you said, please don't get offended because it's not a personal attack. On the contrary, I'm glad that you shared that because when I do lives, a lot of times that's my point. And that's why a lot of Mexican people don't like me, because I point out the fact that Mexico in general is very racist towards black people. I always point that out. I have a couple of TikTok videos pointing out how racist Mexicans in general tend to be towards black people. So much so that Afro Mexicans didn't exist until social media, meaning black people have been in Mexico since white people were there. But yet, you would have never known because Mexico makes the effort to hide them, to hide the fact that there's black people in Mexico, because Mexico is only okay with the image of Mexico being white, rubio. That's the effort that Mexico makes. That's how racist Mexico is systemically, is that ellos quieren que la imagen de México sea un blanquito o blanquita. Es lo que ellos quieren. Even I don't fit the criteria anymore as a Mexican anymore. When people generally tend to think of a Mexican, yes, they think of someone that looks like me. But systemically, Mexico doesn't want this face to be what represents Mexico anymore. They want the rubio, the white man and white woman to be. So if Mexico doesn't even want to represent the indigenous, the brown man, how do you think, well, of course, I'm not asking you, but
No. And I understand where you're going.
Generally speaking, how do you think they're going to treat the black man and the black woman of Mexico? The Mexican who is black. Ellos no quieren, por la misma razón that you see posters of white people of Mexico, Orgullo Mexicano. But you have never seen a poster of a black man of Mexico or a black woman of Mexico, Orgullo Mexicano. There is no such thing as Orgullo Mexicano as a black person in Mexico. But yet, black people have been there just as long as white people in Mexico, but you have never seen in the history of Mexico Orgullo Mexicano y que sea un negro o una negra. You just haven't seen it. That says everything about what Mexico systemically does. So I'm listening to your experience and your input, and it hurts. It doesn't hurt my feelings because a black person is telling me this. It hurts that this is the truth.
It's realistic, and it's hard for us as Afros to walk around, and we have to be all the time evaluating ourselves and validating ourselves and putting ourselves extra out there. I went to a job, I was working, and most of my supervisors were Mexican. I did not tell them when I first came in I can speak Spanish, and I'm a hard worker. My God, they crippled me. They were like, who does she think she are? She goes to break and she come back. They assume I was from Belize because my accent doesn't show that I speak Spanish. It shows I'm Caribbean. It shows I have an accent, but it doesn't show that I speak Spanish. But the part that I get mostly upset is when the Honduran themselves, that I would tell them, yo soy de Honduras. And they would go, Honduras. The same thing happens with the Mexican that I have had friends that I would go with other friends and I would see them and I would go, and so where you descended from? No, yo lo que pasa es que yo soy del grupo que le dicen los güeros. And I would go like, oh my God, this is so crazy. Are you a different species because you are güero? And then the other one are a different species. The same thing happened with us in Honduras. The same thing happened with us. We are, the Honduran want to be labeled. No, nosotros somos color olivo. What do that mean? Where do you get that from? You're talking about your olive color now. What happened? Where are we getting? And she goes, por favor, no dividan el país. Eres fulana de tal y punto. Ah, esos negros allá. Because that's the way they refer. Esos negros allá. Es que, ¿qué se puede esperar de esos negros allá? So it's discriminative. Any commercial that you see in Honduras, you never see a black person in that commercial. We have fight it. We have tried. We have done. In the airport, they act like there is no black. We're invisible. Our airport poster and everything are only olive colors. And when you're coming into the island, which is one of the places that they most receive tourism, You don't see any black people. You meet them when you get outside or what limit, but you don't see them on no poster or anything. We're invisible. You see the olive color, the straight hair, what limit, the narrow face, the cheekbone, what they're looking for. Come on, people. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's wake up to this.
You told me that the most discrimination you've ever faced was from Mexicans, and you gave me an example that you'd be in line at a grocery store, and then you see the Mexicans. Ay, esta negra, esta negra. I actually held back from crying. I forced myself not to cry as I was listening to you say that, because
Appreciated.
I was at the grocery store. The employee cashier was a black guy, and the line was long because from what it appeared is that the guy probably was a new guy, barely in training. I had an older guy in back of me who was a Mexican guy. I don't know this guy, but he, by default, felt very comfortable to say to me, estos negros qué huevones son, ¿verdad? And I turned my body to look. By the accent of how he spoke Spanish, I knew he was Mexican. I didn't even know what he looked like. I just knew he was Mexican. So I looked and turned, and I seen this older guy. I turned my body and I said, puede ser que él es nuevo y todavía no sabe bien cómo. Then he responds, pero es que todos ellos son así. So you
oh
see,
my goodness.
the question is this. The question is this. If the cashier was a young white guy who was slow, will he say, estos gringos que huevones son, es que todos son así? Absolutamente no. The reason why I am who I am and why I do what I do, because I'm going to share with you the family that I come from. My grandma came to visit one time from Mexico, and she went to my aunt's house. I went over to my aunt's house. She was sitting there watching Univision News, the worst shit you could watch, right? So I'm going to pause right there and continue in a moment. You see how I said Univision News and you said, pfft. White people of Mexico wouldn't go pfft because they don't understand what you and I just understood. So anyway, let me pick up the story. So I went to visit my aunts because my grandma was there. Mind you, my grandma is from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up her whole life in Mexico. Only comes here to visit. Doesn't really go out and interact with society. She only comes to visit each other at our homes and stuff like that. Or sometimes she just comes to one house and we have to visit her. In this particular case, that was the case, right? So I go. I was really young. And as she's watching the news, most of my family is there hanging out, saying hello to each other. Out of nowhere, as she's watching the news, something must have happened, or some piece of news coverage that had to do with black people, because Univision, that's what they love to do. They love to demonize black people all day.
Oh my
all
God.
day, right? So my grandma turns to look at us and says, oye, estos negros como estorban, ¿verdad? Now, this is the same grandma that when my little cousin was born, a light-skinned baby, my grandma said, ay, mira qué bonito, como un angelito, because he was light-skinned. But then the same grandma, when one of my cousins was born dark-skinned, ay, mira pobrecito, que negrito salió. So when you tell me and share it with me as a black woman in a Latin American country, and you tell me most of the discrimination that I face has been from Mexicans, I shut the fuck up, because it's true. Not only is it generally true, but it's true because I come from that. And that is the reason why I am who I am today, and I create the content that I do, and why it's important for me to bring someone like you up here.
And I appreciate you very much. I follow you. I don't have most of the time to be on your lives. And I appreciate you today that you took me on, despite I was not in my transformer position. I thank you very much for what you do, because I think you are really educating some of the Latinos for them to understand. You know what happened to me one time in the store? I said to the little guy, because him and his mom would speak in Spanish, and I said to the little guy, "Ay, qué bonito, tú hablas español." You know what? He turned to his mom and made her embarrassed. He looked at the mom and said this to the mom: "¿Tú no me dijiste que ellos no hablaban español como nosotros?" The mom turned all color. She's like, yo no te lo dije así. No. And I said, I'm going to play stupid. I said, ¿y qué quiere decir como nosotros? ¿Qué quiere decir? Ay, yo le estaba contando un cuento a él y lo confundió. In my mind, I'm like, come on.
Sure.
Come
You're embarrassed.
on.
She's embarrassed because this kid didn't come up with this on his own.
Of course not. He hears what goes on in the house and what they said. Tú me dijiste que ellos no hablaban español como nosotros. I know what she meant. You know, black people don't speak Spanish. You understand? But she made a mistake of not telling no todos. Algunos sí. Well, Ricardo, fue un placer. Me tengo que retirar. Me gustaría quedarme aquí contigo. I would love to stay here with you all day. I swear. It's like, you know, a dream come true. Thank you very much.
Before you go, thank you for coming up here and sharing that, because a lot of people think that I make this stuff up. So you just came to prove my point.
You don't.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And you're welcome.
I appreciate you.
Welcome to come back.
My pleasure.
Hasta luego.
One of these days we'll back. Chao, chao. Que tenga un buen día y que Dios te siga bendiciendo.
A usted también. Bye bye.
Bye bye.